What's up guys, Asian here with kind of a different video today. Some of you guys have been asking for my add-ons list, so I figured I'd take some time now and kind of show you guys the add-ons that I have and kind of explain what I use them for, why I use them, and why I think that some of these are very good and basically must-haves, particularly if you're going to be doing something like PvE rating, vet trials, things like that. So real quick, let's start going down our list. Action duration reminder. Action duration reminder is basically, like it says, it tells you right here in the description, remind you time to refresh. Well, this is really broken English, but remind you time to refresh your actions. Basically, what it does is, if you guys have seen my build videos, my theory crafting videos, you'll notice that I have numbers above my action bar here. You can see on the bottom of the screen there. That's where action duration reminder comes in. It basically tells me when I have to refresh my abilities. So you can see here, after when I have 2 seconds left on my Igneous Shields, it'll pop up on my screen that hey, your Igneous Shield's about to expire. And you can see there it also notifies me on the number with the number on the bottom there. And if I swap over, you can actually see that there is a kind of outline around the skill in itself, kind of indicating how long duration I have left. So this works for pretty much all skills. It is a little bit weird sometimes. For example, with Fetcher Inflection on the Mag Sork and Block 8 of Storm, sometimes it'll be a little bit weird. Channeled Focus is another one that's kind of funny because it tries to track Major Ward and Major Resolve, but because every time you step on the Channeled Focus, it refreshes itself. You know, it keeps on going from like 8 to 7, 8 to 7, 8 to 7 back and forth, when in reality, the more important thing is how long is my channel focus still up for. So that's kind of why I don't rely on it by itself. I still use Shrendar, which I'll go over in a little bit, in order to help keep track of my buffs and debuffs. So if we go over to our Addon Settings, Action Duration Reminder, you can make it a account-wide configuration. You can keep track of multiple buffs. So this is keep timer after timeout. Basically, let me just go back here. So I have it set to 5 seconds. So basically, once my Igneous Shield runs out here, you'll see that the 0.0 will continue to flash, and it'll flash for 5 seconds afterwards. So that's basically what that setting means. Seconds of ignorable short timers, basically if it's below this number, then it'll ignore you to basically not remind you for it. So for example, Major Mending from Igneous Shield lasts for 2.5 seconds, so I will not obviously not really worry about it. Shift bar, I'm not 100% shift bar. The shift bar is the where you have your second whenever you bar swap. So if you want to move it, you can shift it using that option there. That's just a font for each one, font size, offset, that's all pretty relatively self-explanatory. Line enable, that's the outline on the ability that I showed you guys. Pop-up alert, that's where the pop-up shows up, so you can move it with move alert flame, so I have it right there right now. I probably should move it around a little bit more so it's not get rid of that, so it's not in the way of our quest log. Sound enabled basically lets you pick a sound to play whenever you need to alert. Seconds to show before end basically is how much time before the buff ends that it'll show up. So 2 seconds before my Igneous Shield will end, it pops up with Igneous Shield and makes the sound here. Which I have set to 15, but you can pick any number on the sliding bar. They're all different. So for example, 52 is the make potion sound, so you can customize it however you'd like. So there's a lot of different sounds you can choose from. So you can just pick a random number, even 70, 78, you know, 23. I like 15. Oop. Some of these are actually silent, so I like 15. It's nice and loud for me, and you can change how many seconds you want. I like the default of 2, but I think the default's actually 1.5, but I moved it up to 2. Seconds to show it, that's how long it'll show up for, and then font name, the actual font, what it is, and then how large it is. So that's action duration reminder. Very, very useful for PvE rating. Advanced filters, this basically is kind of an inventory management system. You can see here it basically allows me to sort each individual thing. So if I go to weapons, I can sort by one-handed, two-handed, bow. I can sort it by all of these with the drop-down menu here. I can do level filters, whether I know the motif or not. What type of motif I know it in. It's bound, but I can trade it. So basically like a bind on equip. So dungeon drops, for instance. So that's advanced filters. It also gives you a text search box up here, so you can search by text. So if you want to know whether or not you have Dragon Guard, for example, I just put down Dragon, and it shows up all my Dragon Guard, AlphaGear Dragon Guard stuff. So that's why I like using advanced filters. It's just very useful for inventory management. Next on the list is AlphaGear. That's this little symbol up here, the kind of Spartan helm with up here. So let me just get out of this menu so you can see. This AlphaGear, this is a fairly well-known add-on. A lot of people use it, particularly PvPers and a lot of endgame raid guilds. And you can see here, it just lets you save up to 16 different equipment loadouts, and it lets you save up to 16 skill bar loadouts. And then you can save up to 16 different combinations of gear and stuff. So you can even label them. So you see this one is Ebon and Alkosh. I have Alkosh and Torogs. I have Solo Sustain when I have Solo Sustain as a tank. I have Morak Tong. I label all of these based on what sets I have usually. So like on my healer, I would have like SBC plus Worm, SBC plus Mending, and so on. So that's AlphaGear is very good when you need to kind of swap gear out on the fly. It's incredibly useful. I would highly recommend you pick that up if you have a lot of different loadouts for different things, especially if you PvP and PvE. Asylum Sanctorium status panel. This was made by Code, very good PvE endgamer. I believe he's in What Mechanics. So basically, it'll only show up in Asylum, but it basically will default up to here on the upper left-hand corner, and it basically will show you various status effects for the St. Ohms fight specifically. So it'll show you, I'm sure you guys have seen it on my stream, how many seconds it has been since the last Storm the Heavens, how many seconds it has been since the last Protector came out. If you are doing hard mode or +1s, it'll show you the timer on each ability, each of the mini boss's abilities, so how long has it been since St. Lothus has teleported, how long has it been since Felms has done his teleport strike move, and he explains it more on the add-on page on ESOUI.com. That's where I get all my add-ons, ESOUI. I manually update my add-ons. I don't use Minion. I manually download the zip files and extract them into my add-ons folder. I prefer doing that, but some people like using Minion. I just like having the actual control over when I want to update stuff and things like that. Plus, it lets me actually see the files and manipulate them if I need to. But if you go to his webpage, the add-on page on ESOUI, just search for Asylum Sanctorium status panel. He'll go into in-depth with each specific mechanic, what each timer is for. So for example, Storm the Heavens, you might have seen it with my runs in Hellfire. Sometimes I'll call out Storm the Heavens is coming, or you'll see our raid lead, Oslo, call out Storm the Heavens is incoming. That's because on the status panel it'll show you how much time it has been since the last Storm the Heavens, and it happens on a 35-second timer. So it will be at least 35 seconds before St. Ohms will use Storm the Heavens again. So when we see that it's on 32 seconds or something, basically when the number turns purple, we'll be like, hey, Storm the Heavens is coming, be on the lookout, get ready to kite. So if you're doing Asylum, I would recommend you pick this one up. It's very useful. We definitely found it very useful both for Mayflower and Hellfire Dominion. Awesome Guild Store. This just makes purchasing things a hell of a lot cleaner. It's a lot easier to find stuff. So basically, if you go to any guild trader here, let's go to Forever Trading. This is the awesome guild store panel here. So basically you can browse by recipe, food, drink. If you go to apparel, it'll sort by armor, and then down here you can have different filters. You can have a price range, a level range, quality range, armor type, armor trait. There's a ton of ways you can filter things out, and Awesome Guild Store just makes purchasing things a lot easier. Now I'll give you guys an example, kind of the limitations of it. So if I go, for example, to consumables, motifs, unknown motifs, and hit start search, you still will have to scroll through. So it doesn't actually filter it out because it can't do that due to API limitation. You still have to go by page to actually see each motif that you don't know. So that's kind of the downside of Awesome Guild Store, but it does make purchasing things a lot easier. So if you do buy things often, like I like to buy alchemy ingredients, you know, that's a very useful add-on to have. Azura, this basically is a UI add-on. It basically lets you move the standard UI elements around. So the default is Azura unlock. So basically, you can see here, these are all where all the default stuff is. So the compass, target health, you know, battleground score. You can move all of these around with Azura. So if I wanted to move where my quest tracker is, for instance, I can just take that and move it around. And I can move it wherever I want. So some of these will move around with, if you move other things, like tutorial will be pretty static there, but you can move around, you know, your health, your standard health bar, things like that. So it's actually very nice if you want to move things around in the standard UI. And then, of course, if you want to lock it, you just hit lock, and I should get rid of the shift bar. Combat metrics, the gold standard for every single PvE player. This is your let me actually pull up an actual report here. Let's do this. So this is your combat metrics report. This is incredibly useful when you need to pull apart your DPS parse, kind of look at uptimes and things like that. So, you know, you can see how much DPS you did. You can see the group DPS, how much of the percent of the DPS you did in terms of group DPS. So if we go to, let's do Stone Atronak parse. So you can see here I did almost 39.9k and I did 14% of the group DPS. The group DPS was 284k. I can take a look at my each ability, how much DPS it contributed specifically, how much damage it dealt, how many crits I had, the average and max hits. I can look at our debuffs, how many debuffs I have. So this is a very easy way to see, you know, oh, how was our spell power cure uptime? You can see here I got 58% uptime on spell power cure. How good was our, you know, our combat prayer uptime? So you can see here we only had 30% uptime on combat prayer. What about our warhorn? We had 24% uptime on warhorn. You know, so it's very useful to help pick apart your parses. You can even do debuffs. If you go here, if you have multiple targets, you can select the specific target. So if I select Foundation Stone Atro, it'll actually tell me the specific debuffs on the Foundation Stone Atro. So you can see Night Mother's Gaze was up 97% of the time, Major Fracture and Major Breach, respectively. You know, Roar of Alkosh, when I did my Alkosh versus Torug's video, this is kind of where I got the debuffs, you know, percentages from. You can even see your Magicka out versus Magicka in, which abilities are draining your Magicka, which ones are regaining your Magicka. Same thing for stamina here. These two aren't used quite as often. It's usually just debuffs and debuffs out. Those are the two ones you see here. You can see everything. This is just, there's a lot of information here, and it's very, very useful. You can see how much healing done, if you are interested in that, how much damage was incoming, how much healing you got, and then you can toggle your combat log, which is basically in your chat bar. It scrolls in your chat bar here. You can save your fights, so you can see I have several parses saved here. You can save them, you can delete them, you can load them. It's just an incredibly powerful tool to use for not even just DPS, but also healers to see your Common Prayer uptime, tanks to see your Alklash uptime, your Crusher uptime. So it's a very, very good tool to use, and I highly recommend. It's pretty much mandatory if you're going to be a PvE endgamer. Constellations, the age-old constellation. So if you bring up combat metrics, this is kind of paired together with combat metrics. Basically, what it does is, basically, let's say you want to know what your CP point distribution should be, your idealized CP point distribution based on your damage you do here. So basically what you do, let me just minimize that. It'll allow you to import your combat metrics, and you can see everything changed here. All your sliders changed. You still have to manually input your spell pen and weapon pen, so you still have to calculate that out. But basically, you just hit combat metrics import, and it'll import. Basically, all this information becomes translated through constellations and turns it into this. You hit the champion points, and then here's your champion points. You can put min and max if you'd like. These are kind of a little bit buggy. It don't always work all the time. And basically you hit calculate, and basically what it'll do is it will take, it'll basically take the percentages stuff from this part here and give you the ideal CP setup for this particular parse. So, you know, it's telling me that I need more points into Mighty, I can take points out of Precise Strike and Thaumaturge, and I need a couple more points into Master at Arms. So that's basically what it's telling me is ideal for this particular parse. Now, obviously, each parse is going to be different. So, you know, if you do 5 dummy parses and you use constellations for each one, it's going to tell you a different CP setup. And, you know, if you so you kind of want to keep that in mind. So this is kind of very idealized, you know, best case scenario kind of thing. Plus, if you are Magicka DPS, you do have to make sure to put minimum here to 75 for Thaumaturge, because you do want 75 in Thaumaturge. You can also put max 75 if you don't want it to, because it'll automatically jump to the next jump point. So it'll actually go up to 81 if you don't put min and max 75 for your Magicka DPS. But this is kind of what I use to come up with these sort of CP distributions here. So again, a very useful add-on to have for PvEers. It's both combat metrics and constellations is a lot of information, but it's also very useful information. And once you learn how to pick it apart, it becomes very useful for you to kind of improve your DPS and your raid group in general. Craft store is this indicator here, the anvil. And it's, if you're a crafter, this is basically probably the best add-on to have if you're a crafter. It'll basically tell you which traits you have research under which tune. So let's say I want to know, you know, I want to know medium. What do I have under medium for this particular tune? I have, well, this is my crafter. I mastered everything, so it'll tell me that I have everything checked off. But you can see here, my tune, Tor the Red Fury, nose well fitted on Jack, and it'll keep track of your research items here, to keep track of your levels, how many traits you still have to research is in red, how many you have is in green. You can select the set here. These are all crafted sets, so you can kind of look them up here. How many traits you need and over here. It'll tell you the furnishing patterns that you know and which ones you don't know. So obviously the ones in red are the ones I don't know. Do it with furnishing patterns. Do it with recipes, cooking recipes. Craft store will actually show up this this menu here whenever you go to a enchanting table, so it's easy to craft glyphs. It's very useful that way. It'll even show you which motifs you know, so you can hide the ones you know, and you can figure out, okay, I still need, for example here, I still need Bloodforge helmets, Bloodforge gloves, axes, and staves. So it's very useful as a crafter. I find it very, very useful to have. It'll also keep track of your horses as well. Can't really see it, but in the chat menu it tells me that 2 of my tunes have completed mount training, so I need to log over to them and, you know, train my mounts. So it's very useful for crafters. If you don't have a crafter, if you don't craft on a character, you can turn this off though. Destinations, this one's out of date, but you can see here in the description, adds various points of interest to your map and compass. So unfortunately this is not the best character to kind of display it on, but it'll show you basically all of the base game destinations, even if you haven't discovered them yet. So for example, if I haven't discovered Silent Mire, it would actually be kind of in a translucent black color, but this is my main, and I've found everything on every single map, so this is not the best tune to show you guys what it does. Let's see what's next. Dustman automates management of unwanted items. So basically, Dustman is awesome if you just want to sell stuff from your inventory. Basically, whenever you go to any sort of NPC merchant, it'll automatically sell things that you mark as junk. So if you let's go to the actual add-on itself, Dustman. So you can see you can basically do any of these drop-down menus and basically mark things as junk, and so it'll automatically sell whatever you mark as junk to NPC merchants. So, you know, I can say, you know, mark every equipment without a trait if the quality is less or equal to normal. I can say mark all ornate stuff. You know, mark I can exclude equipment with Nirnhoned, exclude equipment with Intricate if you want to keep those stuff and sell them on Guild Traders. So you can really customize Dustman, and it really helps inventory management, because all you got to do is just say hello to a merchant and it'll automatically sell everything for you. What's the next add-on I have? FTC. This is, I don't use FTC for the real-time DPS measurement. I use combat metrics for that. That's the this little meter down here. This is the combat metrics live DPS meter. You can actually turn this off if you'd like to conserve FPS. This is actually probably the biggest reason for a lot of people's FPS drops in trials. It's nice to have the live DPS meter. FTC's is a little bit more lightweight. I just like the robustness of Cometmetrics instead. But I don't use FTC for the DPS track. I actually use it for the target bars. So the health bars you see above Falario right now, that's from FTC. That's the FTC one. I'm actually considering swapping this completely out with LUI Extended. I'm still just not sure which one I like better right now. Let's see what's next. Group damage share. So I can't show you what it is because I'm not in a group right now. But for those of you guys who watch my streams, there's a black box up here that shows up with everybody's name and their DPS. It's basically a real-time DPS tracker for everybody in your group. It is a little buggy. It won't track everybody perfectly. Sometimes it won't track me, and sometimes it won't track other people. So it's not very consistent, but it's a useful tool to have if you want to kind of see how you're measuring up compared to the other DPS in your group. Mayflower uses it, not necessarily to shame people for having low DPS, but kind of as personal motivation, intrinsic motivation to kind of see your number get higher and higher. So that's kind of why we use it. It's also useful for Jared or Raid Lead to kind of see where people are at in terms of DPS and kind of see does somebody need to work on their DPS parts a little bit. All of us on Mayflower are very good DPS, so there hasn't really been anybody who hasn't been able to meet their DPS checks. So, but it is nice to have as sort of personal motivation. Harvins improved skill window. That is basically what gives us, let me see if I can find a good example. This is why I shouldn't do this on my main. Okay, so Harvins will show you how much experience you need to level up to the next ability here. So what's a good one? I think I have 50 on everything, don't I? Oh, nope. So you can see here it tells me I still have that much experience left. It has a percentage point. It does it for skills as well, and it'll actually tell you where the morphs of the skills. So let's say Pierce Armor, it'll show me the other morph at the same level. If it's not at level 4, it'll actually show me what the tooltip will look like when I level it up to level 4 or the next level. So you can see here it'll show me Reverberating Brash level 2. So that's why I use Harvins. It's just nice to be able to know what my other options are with skills and things like that, so I don't have to actually morph it in order to see the actual tooltip. But you can turn it off if it's pretty lightweight, so you don't really need to turn it off. IGV Skin Glow and Inventory Grid View. IGV stands for Inventory Grid View. That is what gives me all this. So instead of having everything down in a column like the default UI does, it basically lets me put everything out in a grid, and then Glow, IGV Glow, is what gives me the glowing things on my equipment bar here. So instead of the square that I see here, it'll be the circle instead, and the glow does also affect the squares here too. There are various other ones you can pick out. If you go to IGV in ESO UI, you have options of skins to download and use as well. That's what's next. Inventory Insight, another great inventory management tool. So if you pop it up, this will pop up automatically depending on if you have it set to your bank, your inventory. It's basically, it'll let you select which inventories you want to view. So if I want to see what's, let's see what my Magplar has, this will show me everything from my Magplar, all of my, what's in my Magplar's inventory. Can sort by weapons, consumables. This is all, especially if you have advanced filters, it'll show you all this stuff as well. And you can, and again, just like advanced filters, you can filter out by name. So if you want to know whether my Magplar has Burning Spellweave, I can type down Burning, and you can see that I have these 3 pieces of Burning Spellweave on my Magplar. So that's Inventory Insight. It's very useful for me when I need to figure out where I have stored certain pieces of armor and stuff like that. Lib add-on menu 2.0, lib notification. Those are required for things like raid notifier, the ultimate sharing, and to share stuff. This basically lets you communicate with other players that also are using lib notification. So you need to have these two on. So make sure to have those. It should be automatically be downloaded with the add-ons that require it. Loot log and loot drop, let's talk about these together. These are just helpful for me to kind of keep track of looted items. So for those of you guys who watch my streams, you'll notice that I have loot pop up over here instead of down here where they normally are, and that's from loot log, or loot drop I should say. And loot log, I normally have my chat bar covered, but I can see basically significant drops, so basically set drops, motifs, stuff like that on my chat screen for each individual person. So it's nice to see, you know, if somebody has managed to get a drop I want, maybe I can whisper them and be like, hey, I saw you got this. It is a little bit creepy-ish, but a lot of people use loot log to kind of keep an eye on drops, make sure no one's jipping them. Lore books does exactly what it says here, displays map pins for shallow doors and eidetic memory libraries books. So if we go to the maps, I've already completed the lore book collection for the Mages Guild, but it'll show you, well, by default, all of the Mages Guild books, basically all the books that will give you experience toward the Mages Guild line. You can also activate it for eidetic memory, which are basically all books in the game. So it'll just mark them down on your map here. You can make them show up on your compass bar if you'd like, or you can just have them show up on your bar here. It's up to you. What's next? Lost treasures. This just shows me where treasure maps are. I don't believe I have one in my inventory, do I? Ah, I do. Cyrodiil. So I can show you what it looks like. So it'll just show up at red X where the treasure map is, and it also works for crafting writ locations as well. So if you have like or surveys, I should say. So if you have like a clothier survey, it'll show you where the surveys are in that specific region, and it'll also show up on your compass as well. I believe you can turn that off if you'd like. LUI extended, that is another UI add-on. That's where I have my health. This is LUI right here. That's basically what I really use LUI for the health bars. I also use it for the group and raid frames up here. So when I'm in a group or when I'm in a raid, LUI is what's altering the default frames there. So the bars and everything, that's from LUI. Master Merchant, I have it deactivated because I was running a raid earlier, but normally I would have it activated. This just, if I'm selling stuff, it'll just tell me, you know, how much things have sold for from my trade guilds. Now, Master Merchant only displays prices from your trade guilds, so you do need to be in fairly large trade guilds in order for Master Merchants to be useful. I'm in 2 large trade guilds, one in Belkarth, one in Grotwood, so mine is fairly accurate, but sometimes I'll ask other people because they're in larger trade guilds, like what's the big one here? Angry Unicorn Traders. I know a couple people in there, so I'll ask them instead because they get more volume. So it's a little bit more accurate pricing there for Master Merchant. Master Merchant will tell you how much people have bought things for, not how much they're listed for. So that's very important to know, kind of how much people are paying in order for certain items. Multicraft just lets you craft multiple things at a time, so instead of just having to sit there and mash R to craft potions, you can just basically craft 50 potions. I'll actually move over to an alchemy station right now to show you what it looks like. So if you go to alchemy station, you'll see here, let's make some weapon power pots. As you can see here, the number pops up on the bottom of the screen, so I can tell it to make 5. I hit R once and it'll craft 5 potions for me. So that's what Multicraft is there for. It's very useful when you have to make a ton of potions for raids and things like that. No thank you. That just basically pushes any sort of notifications down to your chat window, so it's not plugging up your chat. Pchat is kind of a customization for your chat, so I know mine is hidden, but I kind of have it changed, so you know each guild is a different color, or I can make it show up people's player name, their @name, as well as their tune name. I can customize things with Pchat, kind of have whispers being a separate thing, separate window, things like that. So I like having that. Raffle Gold, I don't use this anymore because I don't manage a guild raffle anymore. I used to manage a raffle for one of my social guilds, now I don't. I passed that responsibility on to a different officer. But this basically lets you basically do guild raffles for gold. It only does gold, and it is based on an RNG factor. So basically, you say this is how much gold is in the pot. This is how much gold is per ticket. It'll look at your guild bank. See how many, which people have deposited, which people have not, and basically assign them numbers, and then you just say, okay, this is how much each ticket was worth. Figure out which tickets win, and then it'll pop it up on your chat window. So that's kind of how I managed the guild raffle when I used to do that. Raid Notifier is a very important must-have add-on if you are intending on doing PvE endgame trials. So it's best if we should go over here. So Raid Notifier here, you can change the kind of announcement type. Buff food reminder basically tells you if you need buff food during your raid. It'll tell you to turn off pets, turn off assistants, everything like that. This is reminder intervals for the food. You can use a display name instead of the character name. So for example, this character is Shen Liu, but if you have this on and somebody else looks at me, then it will show up as the Asian god. Unlock status icon basically unlocks where it pops up your raid notifier. Default sound you can pick from these. So say I want that, it'll basically change it. Or will it? Actually won't play it right now. But yeah, so that's the default sound it'll play when it has to do things. Dev mode, I just have it on just to kind of help out there. Ultimate Exchanged is basically when you're in a group, lets you in a trial. You have to be in a trial in order for this to work. You can't be like in a 4-man dungeon. It won't show up unless you tell it to, explicitly tell it to. But if you have it enabled, then basically it'll show the healer and tank, and it's going to be a percentage as close to the Warhorn. So if you have 50% ultimate and you don't have, and you're a Templar, you have 120 ultimate. So that's kind of how you can keep track of Warhorns and things like that. So it does account for passive. So Templars have 240 Warhorn costs and 250. It'll take that into account. If you're using Dragon Guard on a DK tank and it's 213, it'll take that into account, and the percentages will alter accordingly. So that's very useful. You can override this as well instead here. So for example, if you're using Master Architect on a Warden and you just want it to be 90 for 4-man content, then you can override that there. Countdowns here, this is just changes the kind of how countdowns look. And profiles, you can basically set a account-wide profile or not, and then if you don't want to, you can just set a profile here and just copy and paste them. So you can see here, this is where all the trials are. So under Hell Ra, it'll tell you when Yokeda Kai, which is the top boss for Hell Ra, when you are targeted by meteor. Do it for yourself. You can turn it on for everybody, so you get a notification whenever anybody is targeted by meteors, or you can just turn it off completely. So Warrior Stone form, so you can see here, if you hover over it, it'll tell you specifically what it will warn you about. And again, self, all, and you can turn the sound to make a different sound from the default sound if you'd like. And you have this for every single trial. So you have Hell Ra, Ethereal Archive, Sanctum, Maw, Dragonstar, Maelstrom, Halls, Asylum, and you can turn debug on or off if you'd like. So this is a must-have, especially for progression groups if you're not quite as familiar with the mechanics. It won't tell you what to do, it'll just give you a warning that it is happening. So for example, what's a good one? So overcharge, for example, if you're getting hit by an overcharge, it won't tell you, you have to shield, you have to heal yourself. It'll just say, wash out, and overcharge is going to be on top of you. So you still have to know, you have to shield through it, you have to, depending on how your group does it, you have to take it out of group or, stay in group in order to get healed. So another good example is Sanctum Ophidia. Quake, it'll tell you that there's a quake underneath you, but it's not gonna force you to move out of the quake. So you still have to play the mechanics. It'll just make it easier for you to learn the mechanics, because it'll let you know, hey, the mechanic is happening, be aware of, what you gotta do next. So again, a must-have add-on for any raider. Research Assistant. Research Assistant. Basically, if you go over to here, you can see there's a little box icon up on the upper left-hand corner. It's kind of hard to see because there's a lock, so I'll actually go to a crafting station. It's probably the best place to see it. So you can see here, it'll show up with the box here. The black box, it's basically a way to track whether or not you need to keep this piece for research. So if it's a black box, it means you can decon it because you know the trait. If it's yellow, that means you have multiple pieces that have that trait, so you can decon the yellow piece. The red one is the one you want to keep, and it'll also show up for ornates and intricates as well. So it's just a way to keep track of which pieces you have to research. RIP filter, this is basically a death filter, so when you're in a group you can basically do /RIPD and it'll post how many times people have died in your group. It's a nice way to keep track of deaths and things like that for raids, kind of identify people who die too much and kind of let them know, you know, in private, hey, you kind of have to work on your survivability. Roomba, this is more of a, this is a guild management kind of thing. So guild banks, you can't actually stack things on top of each other in the guild bank interface. You actually have to withdraw both things and stack them in your inventory and then deposit them. Roomba just does it automatically for you. Srendar, that is all of these debuffs that you see. So over here, for example, the increase all primary stats. This is where Srendar comes in. You know, if I put down a ground dot, I don't have any as a tank, but you know, that's kind of where what Srendar is. I have it. I use Srendar and Action Duration Reminder because they both complement each other very well. Srendar is pretty much always going to work versus Action Duration Reminder, which is a little bit buggy. I like to have again, Srendar as a backup to Action Duration Reminder because sometimes it'll bug out on me. You can customize it, so if we go over to the add-ons, go over to Srendar, it's very, very complicated to set up, but once you learn it, it's actually not that bad. So you can see here, this is kind of a generic thing. So basically, I made it so it doesn't display my major buffs, minor buffs, toggled buffs, short buffs, my passives, anything like that, and I have my long buffs on certain display windows. So basically what Srendar does is you have what's called aura displays. In each window, for example, these are all where everything shows up here. And if I go to general and say unlock, these are where all the aura displays are. So, you know, one corresponds to this one here, and so you can customize one here, so it'll display my enchant procs and my gear procs over here. So when Crusher is active, it'll show up here. And I can customize it however I'd like here. There's a lot of different ways you can customize things, so just play around with it and kind of figure out what you want. I don't recommend going with the default settings because it's just screen overload. It's information overload. So I highly recommend kind of figuring out what you'd like. So you can filter things out too. So for example, you can blacklist certain auras. So I have all of these blacklisted. I have all these blacklisted before I figured out about the general thing. You can also whitelist things. That's not under filters. It's under general, I think. Is it under general? Where is it? Oh, here, prominent debuffs. So you can add prominent debuffs, and they'll be put on your prominent aura list if you'd like. So you can basically put them all on a specific window, and you know, I have here Warhorn because that's important for me to keep track of as a tank as a whitelist aura. So these normally will show up under, I think, long buffs, but I don't want all of my long buffs to show up, so I turn all of them off. And then I basically took the IDs here for aggressive horn, major force, minor toughness, and made them whitelisted. So you can find these numbers specifically. So you can see it says add whitelist aura. You want to have the ability ID, which is this number ID. The best way to do it is actually through combat metrics. Combat metrics will actually tell you if you have to turn this on actually in order for the IDs to show up. But there is an option here. Whoa, my frames just completely plummeted. My ping is horrendous, but yeah, so this is an easy way to do it. Otherwise, you can go onto the actual add-on folder itself and look up the IDs under one of the LUA files. I think it's srendar.lua or it might be castaura.lua. But you can basically open the .lua file using something like Notepad, and basically just go down a list and basically Control F and find the specific buff that you're looking for. But combat metrics is the easiest way to get the specific one you want. So my frames, for some reason, just completely dropped. Oh, there we go. It fixed itself. So all the activated add-ons are Shatzus. I use these for guild management, so The most important one for me is the teleporter. It kind of shows up here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if you guys can actually see it or not. Yeah, you can just barely see it. So you can see here, if I right-click here, it'll pop up my teleporter, and I can just basically hit update and pick any place. These are where basically all my guild members are at, and my friends and group players. And I can basically click. So if I want to port to Deshaun, I just hit Deshaun, hit this button, and it'll automatically teleport me there. So that's the main reason why I have Shatzus, mainly for the teleporter. But I am an officer in a guild, so I do use it to kind of help manage the guild a little bit, kind of keep track of, who's been donating to the guild bank, who hasn't, make notes on, who has, black marks against them or strikes against them, who has been really contributing very heavily, things like that. So Shatzus is very nice if you are a guild officer. That's very useful. But even if you're just using it for a teleporter, that alone is very, very useful. Sky Shards will basically show you all the Sky Shards on the world map. Stoned is a new add-on. Basically what Stone does is it kind of tells you what the best Mundus Stone is based on your parts and things like that. So it's very complicated to use, and it's still kind of in a beta stage, so I don't have it on right now. But basically, we'll put in a parse, and you can basically play around with buffs and debuffs, and it'll tell you, this is how much percentage-wise in an ideal scenario that you can expect if you have, for example, 100% uptime on Minor Berserk. And it'll actually tell you, do you want to use Lover, the Warrior, Thief, Shadow. So that's kind of what Stone does. Superstar basically is a easy way for me to kind of communicate build information. So you can hot slot it, and basically this is the Superstar interface here. So basically shows you, your stats, your distributions, whether you have food, all your important gear stuff, your set bonuses, your CPs, your oh wow, why was I using the Lover? Okay, I guess I did that last raid with the Lover instead of Atronak. Wonderful. Oh well, I mean that's not gonna make or break me, but yeah, I was distracted there. But yeah, this is the Superstar. It's very good for communicating build information. I do it a lot here. Just to kind of show you. I don't really know why skills are here. What happens if I hit start? Oh, this basically lets you play around with skills, so you can say, oh, I have this many skill points. Or it'll tell you how many skill points you need in order to completely fill out all your skill stuff. You can import attributes, things like that. Import other builds. Basically, you have to copy and paste this entire nonsense here and paste it here, and it'll import a build for you. So you can then it'll basically respec your CP points and everything like that. So these are all your favorites, so you can basically view things and view it, and basically respec your CP points, and then respec automatically here. I haven't used the respec feature in Superstar, mainly because I haven't had been into PvP enough to kind of play around with that. But for those who PvP and PvE, Superstar is a very easy way to respec your CP points. We're going towards the end of our add-on list. Suppress error message basically pushes all of my error messages to my notifications. As you can see here, I have LUA error, and that was pushed to my notifications, so instead of having that pop up on the screen instead like it does on default. TTC, Terminal Trade Center, is an alternative to Master Merchant. I have it turned off because it's actually fairly intense in terms of usage, in terms of like memory usage and things like that, so I have it turned off typically when I raid, as well as Master Merchant. TTC has an adjacent website as well that basically tracks anybody who uses the add-on, as well as the standalone executable that comes with the add-on. Basically, whenever you go into a guild store listing, it'll basically record everything that it sees, the prices and everything like that, and upload it to the website, and then generate an average. So TTC is very useful to see what people are selling things for, not necessarily people are buying things for. So if you are somebody who likes to trade a lot, who likes to play the merchant, I advise you use TTC to kind of look for deals, and use Master Merchant if you're in big trading guilds, of course, to figure out what you should sell them for. TTC again is for what people are selling for. Master Merchant are what people are buying for. So you kind of want to combine them both in order to become the best merchant you can be. Trials Weekly Reset Tracker Extended. Very long name, but very useful nonetheless. This basically lets you keep track of your weekly coffers from each trial for each toon. You can't see it because I have my face covering the chat window, but it is a chat. It does go on your chat icon, so basically you do /TWRTE TWRTE, and it'll basically pop up in your chat window your specific character, whether a coffer is available, and if it's not available, how much time you have left until you can get the next coffer. Do keep in mind though that you do have to get a coffer first in order for it to run. So for example, if you haven't run any trials on one of your toons, it won't actually show up when you do the chat command there. So that's something to keep in mind. Undaunted Daily is the same thing as Trials. It basically tells you what the Undaunted Dailies are for that week. It's another chat thing, so basically you need to do /Undaunted, and it'll pop up on your chat window. You can do Undaunted, the number 2 chat, if you want to share it with like a guild or in group chat or something like that. And you can also do /Undaunted and then a number afterwards, which will tell you the pledges for 2 days, or like, you know, let's say you do /Undaunted 2. With a space between /Undaunted and 2. It'll tell you the pledges 2 days from that day. So it's very useful to see out in the future as well. You can do that as well. Wotan's Fisherman is basically helps you keep track of your fish. This is if you're going for Master Angler. I'm going for Master Angler eventually, so it's useful to have Wotan's Fisherman. Wotan's Minimap is the minimap add-on that I use. It basically is a minimap that you can use. I keep it turned off typically because it does lag my game a little bit. I do drop frames when I have it on. I typically only use this for instances where I need a minimap. The only big one I can really think of is Veladreth, but I've done Veladreth so many times I've kind of memorized the paths in the catacombs, so I don't actually use the minimap that much anymore. And finally, Wicked's Toolbar. This is a very old add-on, but it still works. It's basically this toolbar up here that you see here. So it tells me the time. So it's 4:15 a.m. right now. I should probably go to bed. I'm a night owl, if you guys haven't noticed. I do my best work when early in the morning. My frames per second, my ping, my experience bar, inventory space, you know, how many soul gems I have. You can basically have it display several information up here in an easy to read toolbar. So that's basically all of my add-ons there. This is probably a little bit more information than you guys needed, but you know, you guys kind of asked, you know, for a list of add-ons, so I figured I might as well do a little bit more than just show you a list of my add-ons and kind of explain what I use them for, why I think they're useful, things like that. So that's it for this video. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you guys found this video informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.